Hello again, friends, and welcome in. As I sit up, as you know, I'm in pain today, so forgive me for having to wobble on the video here for a minute. But today's been a bad day. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Rusty right here on YouTube and Facebook for February 22nd, 2026. Now, this video is going to be real personal for me. For those of you that watch it, I say stay till the end of the video. Do not leave, because if you leave early, like some people do, you won't get the whole story. And if you're tuning into this video, you need the whole story, not just part of it. Many years ago, I finally met Jim Cornette. And Jim Cornette had, previous to that, had gone on a tangent about former WCW and NWA referee and WCW road agent Byron Scott, son of the legendary George Scott, who passed away many years ago, and Byron, the brother of a brother to George Scott Jr. and the Scott family. And for those of you that don't remember George Scott, you'll remember the name Sandy Scott of the George and Sandy Scott tag team. And Sandy Scott is the NWA Crockett representative for Jim Crockett Promotions, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. He worked in the office for many years. And Sandy Scott also worked in Smoky Mountain Wrestling and other places. That was Byron's uncle. Having said all that, Byron Scott was a friend of mine for a number of years, and I didn't see Byron for a while. And I checked around, and some people say, well, Byron Scott went to jail. And I asked what, and they said for cocaine trafficking and a number of other issues. And he can't come to America now because there was some kind of plea deal or whatever that you basically get your ass back to Canada and you stay in Canada. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the legalese of it. So nobody write me and say, well, it was this and it was that. I don't care. The gist of it, putting it in plain English, is Byron Scott, former drug dealer and criminal, who was a childhood friend of mine before he became a criminal, in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where I learned to know Byron Scott. And I still have to this day a tremendous amount of respect for Byron Scott. And I'm going to send him this video so he knows I'm not bashing him in this video. I'm putting out this video because some of you asked for it. So I'm doing it, but I'm also doing it as a teaching tool to let Byron Scott know that I still love Byron Scott, even if Byron Scott doesn't love me. Anyway, back to Cornette. Cornette went on his podcast many years ago, ranting and raving about how when Byron Scott was a WCW road agent, that he was a stooge for the office and everything like that. Well, maybe that was true. Maybe that was also during the time that Byron had done drugs and sold drugs and just hadn't gotten caught yet. I don't know, or a combination of all the above. But let's just assume that Cornette was right. Byron was put in an incredibly difficult position. Byron Scott, the referee / road agent, was still Byron Scott, the human being. At the time when Byron Scott was a WCW road agent and working for the NWA and WCW, his dad was the booker. In fact, if Byron Scott had had a brain in his head and left the drugs alone, he would have continued a career in wrestling and he wouldn't be a convicted criminal right now. But I'm not here to bash Byron. I'm only here to say that to make this point that, you know, when you work for your father, as Byron did in those days, not only do you have to do what your boss tells you, but in Byron's case, you have to do what your dad tells you. Maybe his dad told him to be a stooge for some of the boys in the locker room that didn't want to do right. I don't know. That's not important. What's important to know is Byron Scott has a story in which he became a criminal and a drug addict and a drug trafficker and his story needed to be told. So I reached out to Byron, trying to get Byron on this channel to do an interview with me. He and I spoke off air one day, and I later reached out to him again and tried to get him to do an interview on this channel, and he refused because he said I had blocked him on Facebook, which was true. But now follow my logic here on this. Most of you know that I'm a guy in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy. And for those of you that didn't know, you just found it out. So those of us in a wheelchair, whether we've got CP, cerebral palsy, or anything, we struggle through life trying to get people to take us seriously. And how that applies to Byron Scott is this. I dated this girl one time on the internet who lied to me. Her name was Betsy Welch. And she lied about many things. And one of the things she most notably lied about was she told me she was getting a divorce and that she was a real estate agent and all these other lies. And none of them turned out to be true. So I complained on Facebook one day about Betsy Welch. Byron at the time, who was a Facebook friend of mine as well, saw me complaining and spoke up and said I shouldn't be complaining about Betsy Welch. He wasn't trying to take up for Betsy Welch. He just knew Rusty Loudermilk as Rusty Loudermilk, the guy in the wheelchair that he knew as a child, rather than Rusty Loudermilk, the man, some 35 years later, that had the same problems as anybody else. If Betsy Welch lies to me or any other woman lies to me, and I feel like fussing about it, I'm going to fuss about it whether Byron Scott or anybody else likes it. If you don't like it, turn off my fucking channel. But once I got over my anger with Byron saying that, I reached out to Byron and tried to get Byron to do an interview about his days as a drug dealer, drug trafficker, former referee for NWA and WCW. And he even worked, even though I said NWA and WCW in the title, I got to go back and change that. He even worked in the WWF in the 80s and fucked that up too. But I'm not saying that to pick on Byron. I told you I'm sending this video to Byron. So I'm not trying to bash Byron, past, present, or future. What I'm trying to say is Byron's story is a story of redemption. And he now lives in Canada somewhere. And I wanted him to come on the podcast here and tell his story to help other people that might be drug traffickers / drug abusers or what have you. Not just to try to help those people, but to help young kids that might go down that path. It might not make a difference, and it might not make a difference to Byron. And maybe my channel's too small, or maybe Byron's ego is just too hurt because I told him basically to fuck off when he stuck his nose in my business regarding Betsy. But again, Byron was treating me sometimes like Jackie Crockett used to, as the Rusty Loudermilk, the guy in the wheelchair that was the child that Byron knew back in the day, instead of Rusty Loudermilk, the adult that now had adult problems just like everybody else. So that's why I basically blocked Byron. I don't know that I said fuck off Byron, but by blocking Byron, I can see why he thought I said fuck off. So Byron, if I owe you an apology, I'm sorry. I would still like for you to come on this channel, tell your story, tell people how you've changed your life, and make not only the channel proud, the wrestling fans proud, and more importantly, make Rusty Loudermilk proud. Byron Scott was a hell of an NWA referee for Jim Crockett Promotions and Georgia Championship Wrestling. Then he went on to WCW. And to my knowledge, he worked in the WWF as well. And I just said earlier in the video, he also was a WCW road agent. So Byron Scott's legacy in pro wrestling should be documented. And since very few people have ever heard the name of Byron Scott, but I did because I knew Byron from back in the day, I wanted to document Byron's legacy on this channel at least, so that somebody would know that Byron Scott made a contribution to the wrestling business other than being George Scott Sr.'s son and George Scott Jr.'s brother. So, Byron, if you'd like to put our past behind us and move on and come on the channel and tell your story and become friends again, my email address is rusty, RUSTY, .loudermilk, LOUDERMILK, at yahoo.com. And you must put a dot between the first name and the last name. Anybody else that wants to email me, you can also email me at the same address, but you got to put a dot between the first name and the last name. You also have to spell Loudermilk correctly. So I'll spell that again. Speak louder and give me milk. LOUDERMILK. So it's rusty.loudermilk at yahoo.com. Or you can call me at 724-826-0449. I'm still in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Byron, I love you, my brother. Your story needs to be told, not only on my channel, but anybody's channel, but especially this one. Reach out to me. Let's squash this beef and let's tell your story. A story of redemption and a story of a guy that has a complicated but yet important pro wrestling past. Call me, Byron. I'm waiting for you. I love you, Byron Scott. And that's going to do it for me, Rusty. I'm out here. We'll see you next time for another edition of Wrestling with Rusty right here on YouTube. And until we meet again, my friends, as the voice of AEW, Ian Riccaboni, would say, happy wrestling, everybody, and thank you for your past, present, and future support.